Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Bracken. I'm with the Digital Public Library of America. We really appreciate you joining us here for this webinar on SimplyE. I want to thank our partners for being part of this with us. I particularly want to thank IMLS, which kicked off this project several years ago, and New York Public Library, which has been our core partner and the core leader in building out SimplyE. And for, it's such a unique moment in time, as we all know. I think we're all trying to make sense of this moment in our own personal and professional and institutional ways. One thing we do know is that, or maybe two things we know, is one, the importance of institutions like ours, institutions of learning, knowledge, and memory that so many of us represent and are trying to figure out what that means in a digital context. Our values and institutions are more important now than ever. Another thing we know is that more and more of our neighbors and patrons and users are looking for high quality digital content, and in this context, digital ebooks. And so I'm particularly grateful for our partners and funders, which at DPLA includes Sloan Foundation, which enables all of our ebook work, for putting us in a place to be able to offer up to you all with our partners this exciting initiative. And with that, I will pass it to my friend and colleague, Michelle Kimpton, to take us through the afternoon.
Great, thanks, John. And it's great to be here today. Thank you all for attending the webinar, Public Options SimplyE. As many of us have had to close our physical libraries over the past 4 weeks, this particular webinar we feel is particularly important at this time, as we've seen significant increases in circulation of our digital ebooks and audiobooks. Actually, Chicago Public Library reported just yesterday a 51% increase in circulation. So it seems ever more important for libraries to have a library-owned and a library-controlled option for the delivery of e-content to their patrons, and that's what we're going to talk about today via the SimplyE platform. We have a great lineup of speakers today. To kick us off will be Brian Bannon. He is the Marilyn James Tisch Director, Branch Libraries and Education at the New York Public Library. He is going to be talking about the value of SimplyE to libraries and what he has seen at New York Public Library in terms of providing ebooks to their patrons and the changes that they've made to really increase impact. Followed by that will be Micah May, our Director of eBook Services here at DPLA. He'll be giving an overview of the SimplyE Library Simplified platform and DPLA's involvement in the project. Next will be Carissa Egan, who is the Outreach and Engagement Manager from Lyrasis. She'll be giving a demonstration of SimplyE. Lyrasis is the largest national hosting partner for the SimplyE Library Simplified software. After Carissa, we'll have Michael Blackwell, who is the Director of St. Mary's County Library, and Brad Bullish, Digital Content Innovation Coordinator from Connecticut State Library. Both of these gentlemen will share their experiences in their districts as they are rolling out SimplyE and what they have learned and what they hope to achieve. Following that, we will be taking questions. Please, as we go along, you can put your questions in the Q&A tab that you will find at the bottom of the screen. We will answer those at the conclusion of the presentation. In addition, if you are having any technical issues, there is a chat icon at the bottom of the screen. You can click on that to let us know of any technical issues that you're having, and we will try to provide you the appropriate support. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Bannon.
Great, thank you. So what I'm going to cover is just a few sort of high-level things. One is a little bit of background on SimplyE and sort of our data here at New York Public Library. A brief thing about Library Simplified and the together, and really just give you a sense of to the point that We've all seen significant changes in using this online during this period, and an update on some of the opportunities that have that we've seen and changes in usage that we've seen since we closed our doors in early March in response to COVID. So with closed in March, 40% of our circulation has been done by online. We're at 100% in that case. So obviously this is a really important part of our core set of services, and I think this is the case of libraries across the country. The challenge has been historically that while e-reading...
Brian, sorry, your audio is scrambled. Do you want to try maybe turning off your video and just seeing if that gives you more bandwidth? Sure. As much as we would hate to lose the visuals in the backdrop.
Great. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So the challenge, I think that many, and stop me again, John, if I get scrambled. The challenge that many of us have experienced is that while we see a rapid growth in use of our ebooks and audiobooks online, we don't currently have a lot of options in terms of managing the architecture, the policy, how we do discovery, et cetera, of our collections in the same way that we do in our physical libraries. And this is, it has a variety of impacts on essentially our ability to really manage our collections, and particularly our collections as they interface and integrate with our patrons. We don't really have the same kinds of controls that we have in the in-person library in terms of doing the work of librarians. And so one of the impacts is that we end up playing more of a middleman role in a way that we wouldn't typically play in a traditional sort of branch library, where our staff are typically front and center in terms of not just the selection of materials, but in merchandising and showing off those materials, through staff picks and book lists of the week and book clubs, et cetera. The current digital platforms that we're all using, in part because they're all separate through different vendors, don't provide the same level of flexibility and opportunity for us to fully realize our potential as librarians. One of the opportunities that really comes with Library Simplified, which is really essentially the middleware element of the product, is it allows us to work with a variety of ebook vendors. So whether it's Overdrive, Biblioteca, DPLA, Baker and Taylor, these are all integrated, and there's more to come. And so what it allows us to do is to take all the various different providers of our ebook content and put them into one central place. Ultimately, within what SimplyE does as the front end of the system, allows us as a library to carefully curate, regardless of where the content is coming from, how those resources show up for our general user base. Again, the opportunity there is, it's a nuanced one, but I think a really important one as we begin to look at the future of our growth online. And I'll talk about just some of the things that we've seen in just the last few weeks since we've been closed. But before I do that, I want to profile a couple of things. Right now, what you can see on your screen is SimplyE, which is the front end to Library Simplified for the New York Public Library. And what you'll see in the very top is it says NYPL WNYC Virtual Book Club. This was an initiative that we launched just over the last couple of weeks with the NPR station here in New York City. We decided to, during in response to the COVID crisis, that we would launch a citywide book club. So the first time we've done this, and we were able to do it very quickly negotiated licensing, infinite licensing for James McBride's new novel, and then worked with WNYC. And you can see that immediately we could profile this in the top of our app. So any user coming to our ebook app immediately sees this book club. And so if we've done big advertising and promotion, this has enabled us to profile this particular this title. What's been interesting about this as sort of a test case is when we launched this just a few weeks ago, we've seen a huge increase in the number of downloads. In fact, if we look at the cumulative top 10 downloads of the New York Public Library since 2017, they're books that you'd be familiar with, but topping the list is Michelle Obama's Becoming, and that's consistently been our top circulating item, and cumulatively, that is our top circulating item from 2017. Our selection, James McBride's book, and again, we've only been advertising this for a couple of weeks, is now our top circulating ebook cumulatively since 2017. And so it shows you the power of both the advertising of pushing a book club forward, but also the ability for us to merchandise that book as the book that we've selected for New Yorkers to read. And it has now eclipsed even our top circulating item of Becoming. What you also see is, obviously we have the bestsellers that are showing up there, and that's something that we can profile, and it allows us to demonstrate, the kinds of books that people are used to seeing or wanting to see that are showing up. So obviously that's an option for us. One of the other things to point out before I get into some of the other examples is that we've seen, since we've closed our doors, to give you a sense of the demand for ebooks, at least in New York, we've seen 36,000 new users sign up to use our ebook platform. This is representative of a 750% growth in just the first few weeks. And it's now leveled off to only about a 400% increase in growth in terms of user signups. And so we're now seeing about 600 to 700 users a day coming online, new users coming online to use this. And what's great about this is these new users that are coming on, they're seeing the materials that we're putting forward in direct response to COVID in this unique moment. And it's a way, again, for us to begin building a relationship with those users as they're coming online in such a rapid pace. In addition, Michelle noted before, over and above, our book club book that we've profiled, we are seeing record numbers of just checkouts in general. So not only are we seeing record numbers of new users coming to us online, but we're seeing huge growth in the materials that they're checking out. And again, one of the opportunities in this environment that SimplyE and Library Simplified provides to us at New York Public Library is that as we're seeing a growth in demand, rather than that audience base being driven to sort of just the bestsellers or just a few select materials, we are able then to look at our unique collections and begin to creatively profile the materials that we think are particularly timely in this moment, given the unique piece, time that we're in, and B, again, to bring forward oldies but goodies, so a way to profile books that may be not front of mind for people, but are this is an opportunity for people to look at them and download them. And so as we're using this moment to respond directly, we continue to see that this is actually having a direct impact on our ability to make available, for example, the 125 books we love, which you'll see there on the right-hand column, or sorry, on the left-hand column. That's as part of our 125-year anniversary. We carefully curated some of the top books that we love here in New York City. And again, what we've seen as a result is a big jump in demand in use for those items. If we go to the next slide. What you'll see on here, again, is sort of representation. Well, next slide, please. And then the next slide. Finally, what I'm going to show here, again, is staff picks. This is, again, another opportunity that something like SimplyE provides to us. Is the ability for us to profile some of the top books. So it's a long way of saying that this platform for us in New York not only gives the power back to the librarians to select and curate materials from staff picks to special book clubs to favorite books, etc. It also allows us to have a greater analytics in terms of who's checking out materials and how we can be more responsive. And so again, it really is a tool that's designed for us to take all of the various different ebooks and audiobooks that are available to us, regardless of vendor, take our users to one place as opposed to multiple places, and then for us to curate their experience in a very specific way and in a very responsive way to our unique users, which in the current state of affairs in the online book environment, that really isn't an option for us. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to Micah to take us to the next piece.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. And we'll see more of the SimplyE app later when Carissa will give us a live demo, but it's really exciting to see how NYPL is using that to, really take back control of their virtual shelves, and you hear the amazing impact it has on circulation and discovery. So I'm starting with this slide that I wanted to make sure to step back and, for anyone who's not steeped in this, give a little bit of an overview of the Library Simplified platform, the whole architecture front to back. So this, kind of technical diagram shows the three major components that we talk about as part of this library-driven platform. So on the left-hand side are the various back-end content suppliers that Brian mentioned. So the DPLA Exchange, as well as Overdrive, Biblioteca, Baker & Taylor, other RB Digital, other distributors of digital content, audiobooks or ebooks, can integrate with the Library Simplified platform through the circulation manager. The big blue box in the middle is that piece of middleware. It's, it's not always the sexiest to talk about middleware, but it really is the secret sauce in a lot of ways where a lot of the magic happens. It's what gives the librarian the control that Brian described to do things like make your own swim lanes, merge books from lots of different sources, put books that are available at the top of that discovery experience as opposed to books that are most popular, which tended to be the default before in vendor-driven platforms. So that's sort of the middle piece. That's the piece that Lyrasis is hosting for many of our partners, and that some are hosting themselves or with other nonprofits as well. So this is kind of the stack. The left-hand side represents the different distributors that can supply books into the system. And those three are obviously not exhaustive. Important to note there, the public domain at the bottom. So as Brian's examples nicely highlighted, libraries can now take open public domain content, Creative Commons licensed content, and merge it in the same experience as their other titles so that users actually discover it and read the books. Those things flow into the circulation manager in the middle. That's a library-facing administrative portal where those content are merged and can be managed, including controlling how they are displayed to the user. And then it goes out of the circulation manager to the SimplyE app, as well as it can be integrated into your online catalog, your OPAC, or really any other discovery interface you wanted to support. So a couple of further notes on this slide. The arrows are really important. The fact that this whole stack is built to be interoperable and flexible. They use a standard called OPDS, which is widely used globally. So it gives libraries a lot of strategic flexibility in the long run if they wanted to change how these components are configured, and it lets them interoperate nicely. And the blue boxes that I highlighted, as opposed to the gray, are the library-driven components. So, SimplyE and Library Simplified are open source and community-driven, and the DPLA Exchange is the only library-owned and driven marketplace for libraries to source content. So the DPLA Exchange, which we launched in 2017, Michael Blackwell, who's on the call, bought the first book, has now close to 500,000 titles. We have over 450,000 titles, including most of the top trade bestsellers, as well as a lot of other kinds of content. We have over 100,000 non-English titles, including a rapidly growing selection of original Spanish language titles, as well as some translations. We have over 40,000 audiobooks, and that number is also climbing quickly. And one of the things that we have tried hard to do, and one of the reasons why we believe it's important to have a library-driven supplier of books, is to push for the best possible licensing terms and different licensing terms for libraries. So we secured some simultaneous multi-use content. We have over 16,000 items that we can serve with a partner, Bibliolabs, that are simultaneous multi-use. We have some unique license models, like this one that's highlighted on the right, that we have from Workman's and Abrams Press, where a library can get a license to either one perpetual, one at a time copy, or 40 lens 10 at a time, the first time that's been offered. And the fact that libraries have the choice was really something that we got by virtue of having a library-driven nonprofit able to negotiate and work directly with publishers to try to bring to market what libraries want in terms of licensing options. Another important part of DPLA's work is our open bookshelf, where we bring together the best openly licensed, so Creative Commons and public domain works and make them free to the public on freeebooks.dp or freebooks.dp.la, which is what's on the right-hand side of this page, as well as for libraries to integrate into their collections. So any library running SimplyE can simply configure their circulation manager, that middleware piece, to automatically integrate all these books. All these books are reviewed by librarians. So we and the DPLA tech team pull together books from lots of sources, and we have a curation core that we just added 3 new members to that are all professional librarians that review these and do things like improve the metadata. There was an earlier question about some of the geometric covers in the NYPL collection, which are being automatically generated where there's no cover from a public domain item. And one of the things that we do in the open bookshelf is create covers where there are none. So we do things like that to make sure these are sort of ready for service in a public library, and the public libraries would feel good about putting them in their collections. And those are free to everyone and free to all libraries to integrate. We've added some new things to that open bookshelf recently, a few experimental publications, which are our first foray into actually making ebooks. So we made an ebook copy of the Mueller report last summer, which won a big award from the Digital Book World Publishing Awards, which really showed the need for high quality, accessible for those with print disabilities copies of these books. And then we put together late last year this impeachment papers book, which is an experiment. It's a compendium of all of the documents related to the impeachment of the president, and put together in one place, as opposed to dozens and dozens of usually dirty PDFs, which is what was released by the Justice Department. So that's one of the ways we're experimenting and helping libraries create diverse collections of important material, and all of that is free to the public and to libraries. We're really excited to be part of this community. I learned this morning that there's now 185 live libraries in production, with Rhode Island going live. So it's a really rapidly growing community of libraries taking advantage of this library-driven stack. It's supported by the SimplyE Advisory Council, which includes the organizations you see on the screen, all people that from early on have been supporting, financially, technically, operationally, this effort. That is chaired by Michelle Kimpton from DPLA and vice chaired by Paul Swanson from Minitex. And there's a number of other fora that participants and community members can join as well to sort of be part of that community. So I would really encourage people who are interested, whether your library has deployed yet or not, to join and us as part of that community. And with that, I'd like to just turn this over to Carissa, and she will tell you more about the details of how this gets deployed, and actually show you both the circulation manager and the SimplyE app. So Carissa.
Thank you, Micah. Hello, everybody. I'm Carissa Egan. Give me one moment while I transition sharing my mobile device screen. I get the lucky task of trying to do a live demo, so bear with me. All right, I think we are good to go. If my audio starts to cut out, I can turn off my video, so please feel free to alert me if that's the case. So first, I wanted to dig into the SimplyE mobile application. I'm running I have an iOS device, so this is the iOS interface. Some of the screenshots you've seen so far are from SimplyE on an Android device. So what you'll see in front of you is the main screen in SimplyE for Wilton Library, which is located in Connecticut. And tied to what Brian was saying that the New York Public Library has done, Wilton Library has created a couple special read campaigns that they have highlighted at the top of their main library landing page here in SimplyE. So you can see a list regarding the Jazz Age as well as baking, followed by, let's see if my screen will update as I move through my device, the default categories or swim lanes of content, as they're called here in the device, for fiction, nonfiction, YA, and children and adult, or children in middle grade, there we go. For those of you who haven't used SimplyE in the past, these swim lanes have a carousel functionality where you can very easily, as a patron, skim through the items, the jacket covers of the items if you'd like, or of course you can click on any of the category titles or the more in the ellipses on the left and then the right side of the screen to dig in and search for other titles within those categories. A few things that I'll note around functionality that you might notice here at the top. So by default, Wilton Libraries catalog is displaying all of their combined content here in SimplyE. If you click on either the ebooks or audiobooks tabs at the top of the screen, and I'll do audiobooks for the moment, the mobile app will continue to keep the same swim lanes or categories of content, but filter by format. So now you can see just all of the e-audiobooks that are in Wilton Library's combined catalog. The reason why I'm picking on Wilton Library in particular, and this gets to, I think, a question that I saw in the chat from Sue, is that they have 8 different content distributor accounts integrated that you are seeing right here in the mobile app. And I'll dig into the administrative portal, which Micah mentioned, and show you exactly where the content being sourced in the app is coming from. But on that note, I wanted to first, and I can't type and talk, I apologize for the awkward silence while I type. I wanted to show an example that really highlights the power of SimplyE that Brian was pointing to earlier. So I just typed Connecticut into the search bar, a very appropriate term for a library in the state of Connecticut. And the first item that you can see, the Connecticut coast, if I click on it, it's hard for me. I don't have a highlighter functionality here on my mobile device, but down in the bottom of your screen, you'll see that this particular title is distributed by the DPLA exchange. So it's a content item that's coming in through the exchange into Wilton Library's catalog. If I go back to the search screen and click on the title Birding in Connecticut, and this directly ties to your question, Sue, this particular item is being sourced through an Overdrive collection that Wilton Library has an account through. And then let me click on audiobooks here. The title, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain, an audiobook, is being sourced from RB Digital. And I feel like this example illustrates the real power of SimplyE, and that the patron doesn't have to worry about the contractual relationships that their local library has with one or many content vendors. It is all displayed in one easy to navigate, easy to search, easy to filter application. They don't have to download a myriad of different mobile devices in order to find something to read or something to listen to in the case of e-audiobooks. Okay, so with that, one moment while I stop sharing my mobile device screen and transition to my computer screen. All right. I'm going to assume you all can see my screen at least now. Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So what you'll see in front of you now, as Micah had mentioned previously, is the administrative portal, the Library Simplified Circulation Manager. It's the middleware piece that really enables the power of the combined collections in the SimplyE mobile app. So the default screen that you see in front of you is the combined catalog view here, and it mimics exactly what you see in the mobile application. So as a librarian at Wilton Library, you don't have to pull up your mobile device to see the catalog and the categories of content. I don't have time today, and I want to be respectful of my two colleagues who have yet to present, to delve into all of the details, but please don't hesitate to reach out to me offline, and I'm happy to schedule a true deep dive into this interface. But I did want to quickly show two components here in this administrative portal. So the first is the way that you would curate those custom highlighted lanes or special categories of content. And it's really just a simple interface where as a librarian, you can search. Let me just clean up some of the text on the screen here. you can search across all of the content that has been integrated for your library in this interface and create custom lanes to appear in the mobile device essentially on the fly within literally several seconds, so to speak, of creating these custom lanes. They will appear in the mobile device for your library. And it's a relatively straightforward interface where you can drag and drop the order of the lanes that appear in the mobile device. You can turn the visibility on and off, so your library staff can start to curate lists before pushing the button to go live, so to speak, in the app. So I just quickly wanted to talk through this functionality. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight here as well is in the dashboard. And I'll wait one moment while my screen updates here. And I'm going to scroll down here to the collections that are integrated, this bar chart, as I think that that's, again, another critical visual to show the power of SimplyE. So as I mentioned just a while ago, Wilton Library, and I chose them specifically because they have 8 different either vendor or open collections integrated in the combined catalog that you can see and that their patrons have access to in SimplyE. There are 3 Connecticut State Library sourced collections, and my colleague Brad will talk a bit about that, I'm sure, here in just a moment, from 3 different vendors, one from Baker & Taylor, one from the DPLA Exchange, and then one from RB Digital, that again, the state library purchases items from and then makes available to residents across the state of Connecticut. So Wilton Library doesn't have to point their patrons to those individual collections or that vendor's specific mobile app. Those items are automatically integrated into their collection alongside their Overdrive collection. In the case of Wilton Library, they are a member of a local regional consortia group. The acronym is LCA, Library Connections Incorporated. And their shared Overdrive collection is integrated in here as well. Alongside, I'm sure as many of you who are familiar with Overdrive, in the consortial setup of an Overdrive collection, there's the concept of an Advantage account. So Wilton Library also purchases an additional supplementary material on top of the shared consortial Overdrive collection. Additionally, Wilton Library also purchases materials directly, licenses materials directly from RB Digital. So that account is also integrated into their collection here. And then lastly, I'll point to the 2 other collections that that we've integrated on their behalf. And that is the DPLA Open Bookshelf collection that Micah was just talking about, with over 6,000 curated open items, as well as an open collection from the New York Public Library as well, their Instant Classics collection. So there are over 12,000, closer to 13,000 open access items also that appear alongside all of their licensed materials from the other vendors in the SimplyE application that Wilton Library patrons can access all through SimplyE. So again, apologies for the brevity, but I am going to now, I'll stop sharing my screen and turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Michael Blackwell.
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Blackwell from St. Mary's County Library. I'm the project manager for deploying the app in the state of Maryland. And so I'm required to thank the IMLS and Maryland State Library for their generosity in supporting the app. I'm going to divide my time into 2 segments, a little bit about SimplyE, and then more about the DPLA Content Exchange. Although some of Maryland libraries deploying are quite large, how many of you have heard of St. Mary's County? We're a small, primarily rural county southeast of Washington, D.C., about 113,000 people. And I'm appointing myself as the official spokesperson for the small library in our conversation. You've heard from one of the largest and best New York Public. Why, if you were a small or medium-sized library, would you want to deploy this app? And there's 6 basic reasons, most of which have been touched upon already. The first is that your library is foregrounded as the provider. It's branded for you. People never seem to leave your digital space. They don't go out to some for-profit content provider, and people who get your ebooks think that they're the ones giving the ebooks. It's your taxpayers' money, it's your library. Show that to people. Second, privacy. All the vendors that SimplyE draws upon are only going to see a library card. Your patrons won't have to give an email address or have other vendors know sort of who they are, what they're looking at. Simplicity, it really truly is easy to use. Download the app, 3 clicks and no more. Your patrons have content. They don't need to have extensive directions on how to use it. Customizable, we saw in New York Public's example, the many different ways you can set it up. You get to control your collection. You get to foreground what you want out there. Accessibility features, SimplyE is working to be the industry leader for people who might have limited visibility or problems with their hands when they hold devices, for example. And finally, most importantly, it does merge and unify all your digital content. Even my little library has 3 different platforms. Why have 3 apps when you can only have one that's branded for you? Even if you've only got one platform, though, I would argue that the first 5 reasons are sufficient for considering taking it on. What are a couple of concerns for a small library about taking it on? Well, first of all, would you have the technical expertise to deploy it? It is an open source app. I guess probably not in most small libraries would you be able to set it up yourself. Fortunately, there are turnkey solutions. In Maryland, we work with Lyrasis, who's one of the DPLA partners, but another one is Amigos. They're both nonprofits. They both provide a turnkey solution for you. So they'll deploy it, they'll host it, update it, troubleshoot it, and provide technical support when your patrons might have any issues with it. I can confidently recommend either to you. Obviously, this raises the question of cost. My little library may not have New York Public's budget. How much would it be? Well, I'm going to just say in general, most systems are going to find it affordable. Exactly how much, I don't want to give you a quote because you'd want to get a quote from one of those providers, but I do have a slide deck that I'll happily provide anybody who's interested in that sets out very clearly what cost would be and also what all the steps you would need to have in order to deploy this app. I don't have time to go into all of it here, unfortunately. So on to the DPLA Exchange. As Mike has pointed out, that's a nonprofit content platform set up by librarians for librarians. Think of it as an overdrive without platform fees. DPLA is an important partner in developing SimplyE, and their titles work seamlessly through SimplyE. So why would you want to get involved with that? Well, first of all, is that nonprofit status. Your money isn't propping up some tech giant or a for-profit library vendor that has its own agenda, including becoming the face of ebooks to your particular patrons. It does have the open library with thousands of high-quality titles, accessible all the time and selected by librarians for all ages. There's some unique content there. In the first order, and Micah graciously pointed out, I placed the first order. Yes, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I compared it to holdings in Overdrive, and 38% of the titles I selected, which were about Maryland history, were unique to the DPLA Content Exchange and were not in Overdrive. The cost is often very competitive. I know that a lot of our readers want the best sellers, but increasingly when we see the big 5 and limit how we can get access to ebooks, we see Amazon not giving us content at all. The ability to provide quality resources at a reasonable cost is fundamental to libraries of all size to move forward to provide a robust digital collection to match our print collections. Micah mentioned those interesting licensing terms. If you can get some variety, if you can get a perpetual license and a metered license, you can best answer to demand. Something really popular, you might want a couple of metered licenses. You're always going to want to hang on to it. And Micah has gone to a number of publishers, has gotten commitments. This is really progress in how libraries can best use their money to provide a wealth of digital content. Finally, it's got a really easy to use interface. I find it very easy simply to order from the content exchange. Are there any drawbacks? Well, there might not be as much content yet there as in, say, an Overdrive or a Biblioteca, but it's expanding. It is another place where you'd have to, sort of track your content. One thing I hope SimplyE will ultimately be able to do is point in a sort of ordering fashion to all the titles you own, so you can see that, you can see where you're getting them from in sort of a simply easy to read screen when you're looking at ordering things. Maybe that'll be functionality ultimately. But no matter what, the content exchange is a great alternative or complement to one of the larger commercial platforms. I've just got one more thing, and that is that in joining SimplyE in the DPLA exchange, you're truly entering a community of practitioners. You're going to find your colleagues there, people who care about libraries, not because they're trying to make a profit off of them. We share ideas, we share our concerns. We're all working to make progress, providing an excellent digital content experience for library patrons, and I hope you'll consider joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brad. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Michael, thank you so much. I have to concur very heartily with everything that Michael said. Again, I'm Brad Bullish. I'm from the Connecticut State Library. I'm the Digital Content and Innovation Coordinator. So I want to, first of all, say good afternoon to everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well and staying safe during these really difficult times. I'd also like to thank everyone at DPLA for inviting me to join you today. The Connecticut State Library and I have really enjoyed the partnership with DPLA and with Lyrasis. It's great to work with organizations that are so committed to the betterment of libraries and the resources and services that they provide. Today, I'll share with you a little bit about our experience at the Connecticut State Library and in the state of Connecticut with SimplyE. The need for a centralized book platform was actually identified by our state librarian, Ken Wiggin, back in about 2014, I believe. He and my predecessor, Eric Hansen, actually worked together to get the program started, and they were pleased that they didn't have to start from scratch. SimplyE, the open source app that we've been talking about today, had already been developed by the New York Public Library. So the Connecticut State Library partnered with the New York Public Library and a gentleman whose name is James English, who some of you may know, who now works at Lyrasis, to develop the program. So needless to say, there was a lot of hard work that was done by Ken and by Eric and New York Public Library and Lyrasis and others to kind of get the ball rolling. Where we are today is actually, we've come quite a ways. They actually developed the Connecticut State Library's ebook program, which we call EGO, and that's the program that I now oversee. I'm really fortunate to have stepped into this role at the Connecticut State Library in December. I started on December 6th, so I'm fairly new. And this is really, at the time that I stepped in, was when we were beginning to roll out the SimplyE app to libraries and their patrons. So really, the push from getting libraries educated about it and getting it out to patrons was really what the goal was when I started in December. So in Connecticut, there are 192 libraries. So when I came on board in December, 120 libraries were actually configured in the SimplyE app. So a lot of work had been done already. So the goal in January was for us to get out and talk to libraries, encourage them to begin to roll out the SimplyE app to their patrons. So step one of this process had already begun actually back in November, and that was providing information sessions across the state to educate librarians about the program and to begin to recruit libraries to roll the app out to patrons. We held 9 sessions for over 100 librarians, and over the course of 3 months, we were able to generate some interest in the app, which was really great. With the interest generated, Carissa Egan from Lyricist and I decided that the best way to get the ball moving in terms of getting libraries to start to roll this out to patrons was to do a phased approach. So the phase one kickoff, I should say, was in February. And so we had 6 libraries that actually volunteered to go live in the SimplyE app in February. In March, we enrolled another 5 libraries. And as we look forward to our April rollout, we were making slow but steady progress, which is really great. But I have to say, once the COVID-19 crisis hit and the demand for e-resources, they went through the roof. And since then, we have seen a big increase in the number of libraries that are interested in the EGO program and the SimplyE app. So that's, one of those great outcomes from a bad situation. So since mid-March, when the impact of the crisis really made itself felt in Connecticut, 41 new libraries have inquired about the process of going live in SimplyE. So if we look back to March 15th, there were actually 15 libraries that were live in the app at that point in time. As of today, we have 29 libraries that are live in the SimplyE app. So in a little over a month, we've nearly doubled the number of libraries that are live in the app and actually sharing it with their patrons. So looking, globally in Connecticut, we have 192 public libraries, as I said, and 140 are now configured in the test mode in the SimplyE app. And as I said, we have 29 that are actually live in the app. So we've really made some great progress in moving forward with the EGO program. So I really think it's a testament to the value that SimplyE brings to libraries. I feel very lucky that we were so well positioned to have a product like SimplyE to offer public libraries and their patrons at the onset of this crisis. It's just such a perfect resource to be able to offer when everybody is working remotely and learning at home. So many librarians have reached out to me to say, they wish they had taken advantage of this sooner, because now it's clearly illustrated the great value that SimplyE does provide to them and to their patrons. And the other side of this is to teachers and students too. That's one thing I've been working a lot with teachers, educators who are looking for, summer reading books and class reading materials that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So we've been able to help, the educational community as well in a big way. So I have to say it's been incredibly rewarding for me to be able to work on a project like this when there's such a tremendous need for access to ebooks and e-audio. Working with Lyricists to actually get the libraries configured and ultimately go live in the app. And particularly with working with Carissa Egan from Lyricist, it's been a great pleasure for me. Just the efficiency, the professionalism, and patience that Carissa shows me and all the Connecticut libraries makes the whole process go much easier. And it's made truly my job so much more enjoyable and a lot easier than it would have been otherwise. Now with the libraries really taking advantage of the SimplyE app in Connecticut, we've really begun to aggressively purchase content, especially from DPLA Exchange. So it's great to work with DPLA because they have simultaneous use and perpetual ownership options that other vendors just don't have. So that we feel brings value to our collection and lets us build a collection that we can plan to have today and continue to grow in the future. So far this year, and really very recently, we purchased over 1,400 items from DPLA Exchange and other vendors because we've seen a 42% increase in circulation, and of course the demand for e-content has just, like I said, gone through the roof. With SimplyE, you're able to provide the content that we purchase and also the content that is made available in the SimplyE app from DPLA Open Bookshelf and also NYPL Classic. So it's, there's an incredible amount of content. So when you look between our purchase content and the content that's provided from DPLA, we basically offer libraries in the state of Connecticut that are participating in this program 21,000 items that they have readily accessible at no cost to them. So it's a tremendous service enhancement. And, I think, as I said earlier, it's just so rewarding to be able to share resources like this during such a difficult time. So we expect the interest in SimplyE in Connecticut to continue and to grow. And our goal is to have all eligible libraries on board by the end of the year. So that's really a snapshot of what our experience has been here in Connecticut. And I guess at this point, I can turn it back to Michelle. So thank you very much for your attention.
Great. Thank you, Brad, and all the wonderful speakers today. We have 9 minutes left, so I'm going to go through, because I don't know if you guys can see the answered questions, so I'm just going to go through them quickly so that everybody knows what questions have been asked. First one, what's up with the green and blue book covers and the MYPL example? That was the beginning example that Brian Bannon showed, and those are typically public domain books that don't have covers. So as Micah calls them, the oldies but the goodies. We do work with a company actually to design new covers for public domain books, but we don't have covers for all of them. Next question. So it's an integrated interface. Does the library pay for it? I think the question is, SimplyE does integrate all your content. We saw that from multiple vendors. The library doesn't pay for that integration. However, if the library doesn't want to host the platform itself, it can get the platform hosted by a hosting provider. We talked about Lyrasis, as well as Amigos and Khalifa are the three hosting providers, with Lyrasis being the national one. Next question, could Hoopla be integrated as well? We are actually in discussions right now with Hoopla about potentially running a pilot, but one of the key things for SimplyE and Library Simplified to integrate content is that it needs to provide a standard interface to the content to be provided through the app. And Hoopla hasn't done that, but we are in the first stages of the discussion to see if we can get to the next phase. That would also be the same answer for, I believe it's Canopy. We are not in discussions with them, however. Do patrons still need to establish individual accounts with content distributors in order to access titles through SimplyE? I'm not completely sure what that means, but you would need to have an account with Overdrive to buy content from Overdrive, if that's what that means. But
the library would, but the individual patrons do not need to sign up with the separate services. It's all done through SimplyE. You log into SimplyE, yes, and the patrons get whatever they want then.
Exactly.
The answer to the Q&A is it uses that vendor ID approach, so the patron never has to have a separate Adobe ID or Overdrive ID. They're just their library card.
Yeah, the largest benefit of SimplyE that the patron doesn't have to go to multiple apps. So one sign-in, one app. Correct. Okay. Next, is there a potential to integrate audio in the form of music? Not sure what this means. So Micah, you want to give your answer?
Yeah, I mean, I answered this in the Q&A. I think that, music is generally distributed in MP3, which is the same as audiobooks. So there's the technical potential. There are not any music distributors on the roadmap yet, to my knowledge. And what I said in the Q&A is I think that the Library Simplified community would be interested in hearing from libraries about what their priorities are for other formats. So there's nothing that would technically prevent a music provider from being integrated if they had the outbound APIs or OPDS feed that was needed, just like Hoopla or Canopy or any other vendor.
Right, and I guess the important thing here is that there's a standard API, it's called OPDS, and that is what's required for any content to be integrated with SimplyE. Okay, we're getting down to the end here. This is from Chelsea. I'm curious about statistics. We have region-wide system and keep stats at the branch level. We have two platforms currently, RV Digital and Baker and Taylor. We get branch level statistics from RV Digital, but not with Baker and Taylor. My question is this: will we be able to receive branch level usage statistics from SimplyE, even if we don't receive them from the original distributor? And Daniel from MYPL has answered that question. zip code based statistics are possible, but not branch based yet. However, sometimes zip code based might be more telling since people move around, their card stays connected, which wouldn't be the case if they wouldn't be connected to the wrong branch. I don't know, Daniel, if you want to highlight anything else from your answer there, because this was a fairly complex question. Okay, next. Also, we have magazines through RB Digital. Would those be available in the app? And I answered the app currently supports EPUBs, PDF, and audiobooks. Other formats are being discussed based on feedbacks from users. So if your magazine isn't in that format, I know that many formats, including magazines, are being discussed today. 3 more open questions. There are many streaming audio resources. What?
Sorry, just noting RB Digital, since it was about that specific vendor, is already live. Like Connecticut has a lot of RB Digital content in use. So.
Yeah. EPUB, PDF, and audiobooks are all available. There are many streaming audio resources, some in resources like Hoopla, but also Naxos or ASP that you don't check out, but just stream. I wonder how that would work. You know, if anybody wants to answer that particular question. Yeah, and I just go back to the same answer. Content has to come through the OPDS feed. We're working with many vendors, Hoopla being one of them, but streaming is much more technical in terms of being able to work with that particular protocol. Okay, 2 more questions. A patron couldn't use SimplyE to have an Overdrive book delivered to their Kindle, for example, though, right? They'd have to read it through the SimplyE app. Yes, that is correct. It is not integrated with Kindle, although you can, I believe, get the book through other formats, but Kindle integration is not one of them.
Yeah, I think the thing to underscore there, Kindle can be confusing because it's used to describe both the physical tablet device and the format. So Amazon has not allowed anyone else to provide Kindle format except for Overdrive, and so it doesn't provide Kindle format. If a user had a Kindle Fire device, any internet-enabled Kindle device, anything but the Paperwhite, they could use that device to read to get SimplyE app and read the books in the SimplyE app on that Kindle device.
Okay, and then last from Chelsea, zip code would not work out well in our case. Yet you say yet. What is the time frame on that? And I think Chelsea would have to look at the roadmap. I don't have an answer today, but we can get back to you. Okay, I think that's all the questions that were in the Q&A and the ones that we were able to scarf up from the chat. And I'll give it a few more seconds just in case I missed one. If you want to put it in the Q&A. Okay, great. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for attending the SimplyE webinar today. I think it was really a rich discussion with many, many good questions. I also want to thank all of our panelists for putting the time in and doing a wonderful job presenting the materials. So, and thanks everyone, and a recording will be available and sent to you via email. So once again, thanks very much.